We celebrate New Year's every 365 days here on Earth, but on the planet Mars, they celebrate every 22 months, almost 2 years, because the orbit around the sun is that much longer. Well, they celebrate the Mars New Year's right here in Mars, Pennsylvania, here in Butler County. Let's talk to some of the folks involved with this big celebration with lots of important guests coming in and find out what's going to be going on here in Mars, Pennsylvania. The mayor of this community is Greg Hartung. He's been a mayor for several years now, and you've been very much involved in getting this whole celebration, this New Year's celebration together. How did the idea come about originally?
Well, our historical society for about 10 years, maybe 12 years, had celebrated New Year's on the traditional Earth New Year's, and it gets cold and rainy, and 2000 was a good turnout because of the 2000 year being celebrated, but every year since that they have been diminished in terms of the size of the crowd coming out, so that when they said, well, we're tired, we really don't want to do the traditional Earth New Year's anymore, I said thank you very much as mayor, and I said maybe there's something we can do in the future. So about 4 or 5 months later I met with them, and it just came off my tongue. I said, well, does anyone know when New Year's is on the planet Mars? And I seen everybody look around the room like, wow. And I go, do you? And they said, well, you're the mayor. Do you know when the planet Mars has its New Year? I said, no. They said, well, it's your job to find out. So I picked the phone up several weeks later, called the Jet Propulsion Lab in California and asked for the Public Relations Department. And I said, this is Mayor Hartung from Mars. And they said, we get a lot of phone calls like this. And I said, no, really, Mars, Pennsylvania. And the guy on the other end said, I just was in Clarion, and I know exactly where Mars is at. What do you need? And I said, we need to know when the next Mars New Year on the planet Mars will be. He said, well, it'll be June 19th, 2015. And from that, we ran with it. And he said, whatever you need from NASA, let me know, and we'll make it happen.
Why do you think NASA was so interested? I understand there are a number of people from NASA coming here for the celebration. Why did they jump on it the way they did?
The name Mars and the next big exploration for human beings is to go to the planet Mars. So that was their main reason. It was our name.
Now, you got straight through to somebody at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is unusual because it's such a big operation. There are a number of people from NASA coming here, aren't there?
Right. We have about just under 30 people coming from different parts of NASA. And one of the key people is Kate Beckwith, who is actually a graduate of Mars High School. She works at the Jet Propulsion Lab and is an engineer scientist there. So it's exciting to have someone coming back to Mars who's possibly working on projects that will take people to the planet Mars and going to be part of this celebration.
Is the whole community embracing this project?
Yeah, our cross-section of people on our committee, which is about 20 people, come from the Kiwanis, from the Rotary Club, from various groups in the community. So we have a wide section of the participation from organizations and individuals helping us make this happen.
Something you told me earlier, Greg, is that the reason why the New Year's celebration in Mars is not every year on Earth time is because it's every 22 months. That's how long it takes Mars to orbit the sun?
Yeah, compared to Earth's 12 months, we're talking 22 months for Mars. So that gives us a little bit more preparation than an annual event. So we were kind of excited that we didn't have to do this every year.
Well, we want to talk with the keynote speaker, Dr. Jay Apt. He's an astronaut. He's been up there 4 times. We want to talk with him next to find out about his experience and then why he's coming to Mars for the New Year's celebration here.
Yeah, Jay's going to be a really nice addition to our blast-off dinner on Thursday evening, May 4th. And we're excited about all the different types of participants from NASA. We have 2 top scientists. We have a number of people from the Mars Public Engagement Team, which is one of the teams we work with closely. They're about educating people about the planet Mars.
Mayor, thanks very much.
Thank you, Larry.
I'd like you to meet Dr. Jay Apt. He's a very special person who has a remarkable background. He's done so many interesting things. Right now, he's a professor at the Carnegie Mellon University Tepper School of Business. But before that, he was an astronaut for quite some time and made 4 space missions. He spent 800 hours in space. Dr. Apt, I think we should start probably with how you ever got interested in the field that you're in.
Well, Larry, thanks for having me on. The first thing that I remember in space was looking up from Pittsburgh and seeing the Echo balloon, a huge satellite, go overhead when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And people were just amazed to be able to see an artificial moon going around the planet. And I said, I want to do that. That's the most exciting thing that people of my generation were doing, and I want to be involved.
Now, being a physicist, does that necessarily lead to space travel?
Well, no, of course, most physicists stay firmly planted on the ground. In my case, I wanted to get into space travel, but I had no way of getting a space travel education in college. Nobody was doing that sort of thing. And physics seemed like a natural thing. I'd always been interested in physics, growing up around here. It was a very high-tech area. It's been high-tech since the steel mills came in, 130 years ago. And all through the development of neon lights that was here, Westinghouse, Pittsburgh area, all the way up to Erie, where they made these fabulous locomotives, has always been a high-tech area, and it was natural to get involved with that.
Now, when you graduated from MIT with your doctorate, did you jump directly into the space program?
I went back for a postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard, where I got involved with planetary astronomy. There was, in those days, a mission to the planet Venus, space mission, and we were to look at Venus from ground-based telescopes and give a context for what was happening on Venus when the spacecraft went into orbit there and when 4 landers went through the atmosphere. Well, they weren't landers, they sampled the atmosphere. And so we made weather maps of Venus from ground-based telescopes in Arizona, infrared images that were just fabulous. We found there was a hurricane around the south pole of Venus and marvelous things. So that's how I got into space exploration.
Doctor, let me digress a little bit. Is it important for us to land on the moon? Is it important for us to land on Venus? Is it important for us to land on Mars?
It's really important for people to stretch their imaginations. If we're just thinking about what's day to day and where our next meal is coming from, that's not human. It's human to explore. That's how people got out of Africa. That's how we came across the land bridge to this country. It's how people in canoes settled the west coast of the Americas all the way down to Chile. Exploration is part of what it is to be human. Now, some of that is robotic exploration, these fantastic spacecraft like the ones that we did when I was at JPL, ones that people are doing now, the fabulous orbiter that's around Jupiter right now. But it's also important to take our little bodies and put them in harm's way out there. People have done adventures for many years. It's part of what makes us human. Is any one objective terribly important? No, but is the objective of being able to move at will within this solar system, even the inner part of the solar system, important? Sure it is. It's going to take us a couple of 100 years to be able to move at will within the inner solar system, but I'm glad I was a part of the very beginning of that.
Let's jump ahead a little bit from the situation where you were doing that kind of work. You somehow got involved with the space program with NASA, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. How did that jump come about?
Well, when I was working at Harvard on planetary astronomy, Venus and Jupiter, the Jet Propulsion Lab, Caltech's Jet Propulsion Lab, offered to double my salary. Now, mind you, that wasn't too very hard. So I moved out there and I became the director of the observatory that JPL maintains on Table Mountain and a part of their planetary astronomy group. And I worked there from 1979 to 1982. In 1980, there was a call for astronauts. There had been one in 1978, the first post-Apollo call for astronauts. And I hadn't seen the one in 1978, but I saw the one in 1980, and I applied, along with 7,000 or 8,000 other people. And I was lucky enough to be one of the 120 people who got brought down to the Johnson Space Center in Houston for an interview.
What was it in your background or your character or in your grades that made you pass the cut?
Well, I passed that cut, but that time I didn't get selected. Out of the 120 people who came in 1980, only a few got selected. I wasn't one of them. But the people who were interviewed with me were either military test pilots, military aviators that weren't pilots, backseaters, or civilians, right? And they were looking for civilians with lots of different backgrounds. I'd had about as many flight hours in light aircraft as the military aviators had had. I'd flown a light airplane over much of this hemisphere and flown for a while commercially. They liked that. They liked the fact that I could work with my hands in the laboratory. And the other thing that's important about NASA is when you're an astronaut, you're up there, you're not doing your own work. You've got to be in service to other people. Their experiments are the ones that are important. And they kind of liked the fact that I had been doing that for other people at observatories.
So going up in space is more a study of experiments than anything else?
We did a lot of different things. I had 4 different space shuttle missions, and we did different things on every one. But on every one, there were some certain types of experiments. On the first mission, our main job was to take into space a huge observatory that looked at the cosmos in the most energetic form of radiation, gamma rays. And it was the gamma ray observatory that we took into space. It didn't work. When our crewmate, Linda Godwin, lifted it out of the payload bay and put it on the end of the arm, the ground commanded robotic systems that first put out some huge solar arrays. That worked fine. And then they were supposed to deploy a big antenna, a radio antenna, that was to send all of the information back down to the ground. That didn't work. We were asked to shake the thing on the end of the arm. That didn't work. We were asked to move it into sunlight and shadow in the hopes that perhaps the temperature difference would fix whatever was wrong. That didn't work. And so the ground asked my crewmate, Jerry Ross, and I to get in our spacesuits and go outside and see what we could do.
What did that feel like? Not only being out there, but the idea of stepping outside of the safety of the space capsule.
Well, we had had the first planned spacewalk in 5.5 years, scheduled for the very next day. And so we had trained very well, and we said to each other, look, we're the best guys on the planet, or off the planet in that case, to do this job. Now, the ground sent us up a procedure on the fax machine that we knew wouldn't work. Our commander, who was just a really great guy, terrific leader, said, fellas, I'm going to tell the ground, you're on board with their procedure. Now you guys go outside and do what you need to do. And so we did, and 16 minutes after we went out, the spacecraft was fixed.
Didn't you have an accident out there, something that affected your glove where you might have been decompressed?
Well, on the second spacewalk the next day, we were doing a lot of hard physical labor, and a failure happened to the suit that had been predicted many years before. It was a design error. If you have a spacesuit, there's pressure inside the suit, and all of the fabric wants to go out, so there's restraints that keep it in place. On my hand, there was a stainless steel bar that was to wrap around the hand like this and kept the bottom of the glove from ballooning out. Well, there was a design error that had caused the stainless steel bar to be able to work loose, and it worked its way through the suit material into my hand right about here. Well, I didn't know anything about it at the time. There was no loss of pressure. When I was taking my suit off at the end of the 6-hour spacewalk, Linda Godwin, our crewmate who was in charge of helping us get out of the suits, said, you know, you're bleeding. And I said, okay. It hurt, but there was lots of other things that hurt in the suit. There's a lot of folds in the material, like this one here, and they're pressed into your skin. And I had a really tough, what we call a suit bite, right about here. And that hurt a lot worse than this one. It was no big deal.
Let's go back to the beginning of your adventure as an astronaut. And you were going up on your first trip. What does it feel like? Now, obviously, there's a lot of preparation beforehand and maybe simulations of rising into space and all the noise and vibration that goes with it. When you actually were sitting inside the capsule, when you knew it was about to shoot you into space, what were your feelings?
the truth is, when I was sitting in the Space Shuttle Atlantis, April 5th of 1991, I wasn't worried at all about the shuttle, any accident. I was worried about whether I'd be able to execute my training. Once I found out after that flight that I could do fine in space, then the next 3 launches were just pure fun.
Shortly before you became an astronaut, or around that same time, the space launch of Challenger blew up and killed the entire crew. It must have shaken up all of you on the astronaut corps. It must have had some effect, realizing that the next one might do the same thing.
The Challenger crash happened 6 months after our class of 13 people got into the astronaut office, and we knew all of those folks. I shared an office with 2 of them, and we knew them very well. We all knew that aviation was inherently dangerous, and space travel even more so. In fact, with the 2 crashes, the Columbia later, out of the 135 shuttle flights, 2 of them ended in disaster. If you work out the numbers, since I flew 4 times, my chances of dying in a shuttle crash were 1 in 17 about. We kind of knew that going in.
How do you handle that, though? Knowing something is one thing, but what about the feeling that you might not make it?
Well, you don't waste any brain cells thinking about that. What you think about is getting your stuff right. And the astronauts' motto is, it's not going to fail because of me. You get your stuff right, and the rest of it will take care of itself. And, so you don't worry about you. You worry about your family, and from an insurance standpoint, I was worth more dead than alive anyway.
When you get back to Earth or about to land, is there a special feeling there, maybe a feeling of relief that you're making it back safely?
Now, there's a feeling that you want to go back tomorrow. It's just a fantastic experience, launching, being in space, looking at the fabulous Earth out the enormous windows of the shuttle. If there's any common feeling in the astronaut corps, it's that as soon as you land, you want to get in line for another flight.
Something very special is coming up very soon, and you'll be very much a part of it. The Mars New Year. I understand it lasts about 22 months rather than the 12 months here on Earth. And Mars, Pennsylvania, has invited you to be the keynote speaker up there. Why are you and why is NASA so interested in Mars, Pennsylvania?
Well, the Mars folks got on board with the STEM education train some years ago, and their last one of these 22 months ago was a fabulous success, bringing people to the idea that engineering, science, math can get you a fabulous job, and moreover can get you tremendously interested in things that might be down here on the Earth or might be up in space. I'm just very excited to be part of this great STEM education program that they have every 22 months. Mars is further out from the sun than we are, and so it goes around more slowly than the Earth, and so it takes nearly 2 years.
And Mars, Pennsylvania is right up the road from here, and you'll be there.
I will be there, and I'll be just delighted to see everybody that's up there. They have some tremendous exhibits. They have some great competitions. There's a woman who grew up in Mars, Pennsylvania, who now works at the Jet Propulsion Lab doing material science, and she's going to be there. I'm just really excited to meet all of the folks and all of the students, other young people who will be up there.
Well, let's find out more about that from the folks who are arranging the whole program in Mars. But I want to thank you first, Dr. Abt. Thanks for having us into your office here at Carnegie Mellon University, and thanks for being with us.
Larry, it's just been a pleasure, and I'll see everybody up at Mars.
It's taking a lot of people here in Mars to get this whole New Year's celebration together. Missy Graylish is one of the volunteers, and she's the spokesperson for this whole operation. Missy, how did you get involved with this? It's a big job.
Gosh, interestingly enough, I was in a restaurant and I saw a gentleman that had a Mars New Year t-shirt on, and I said, hey, by the way, I work in broadcast. If you ever need some help, I'd be more than happy to help. Lo and behold, I got the phone call saying, hey, would you like to help us out for the 2017 Mars New Year event?
And here you are.
Here I am.
Let's talk about the events. What are some of the main events coming up here in just a couple of days?
So first, we have on May 4th, it is the Mars New Year Blast-Off Dinner. That's going to be held at 12 Oaks Mansion. At that event, we will have Dr. Jay App, former NASA astronaut and CMU professor speaking, as well as Kate Beckwith. She works for the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and I'm excited to say that she's a Mars graduate.
Isn't that a strange coincidence that somebody who went to school in Mars is also with NASA at the time you're celebrating the Mars New Year?
It's a wonderful, wonderful thing for all our families and our kids to actually get to listen to a former graduate from Mars.
Tell us about some of the other speakers that are coming, some of the other guests from NASA.
First of all, we have Dr. Jim Green. He's actually going to be pre-recording an interview, and we're going to air that live on the day of the event, which is Friday. The start of the event is actually Friday, May 5th. We also are going to have a live interview from the Johnson Space Center. We will be doing that live via satellite broadcast. I'm not exactly sure who the speaker will be. We're soon to find that part out, but that'll be forthcoming. Kate Beckwith will be speaking at the event. We're going to have Douglas Terrier. He's NASA's acting chief technologist. We'll have Dr. Michael Meyer. He's chief scientist of the Mars Exploration Program. We'll have Mary Wojtek. She's a senior scientist, NASA Astrobiology Institute. We're going to have April Leno, which, by the way, is another Mars graduate that we're proud to announce. She's a science educator. We'll have Mitch Schulte. He's the Mars 2020 program scientist. And Rachel Tillman, founder and executive director of the Viking Mars Project.
Missy, was it difficult getting as many people as you need to volunteer to do this project?
It has not. There are so many folks that are interested in STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, that it was very easy for us to reach out and to get a hold of many volunteers. So it's been awesome.
I understand this is partially an educational project, so the schools in the area have some programs that tie in?
First of all, we have the FIRST Robotics program, and they're going to be involved with this. And then Mars High School is very, very involved. We have a lot of students from their school that are going to be helping out with the event. One of the most important pieces for the students is we have a program called Meet the Mars Challenge. And Meet the Mars Challenge is basically like a science fair. It's a competition, and it's open for grades 9 through 12, whether you're a typical school goer or whether you're a homeschooler or cyber school, it's accessible to all.
So the educational part is really important, but I guess there are going to be some interesting exhibits around as well.
Oh gosh, we're going to have so many exhibits. So NASA is going to have things like a 3D panorama of Mars. We're going to have 3D goggle, expedition virtual reality event. We're going to have a Mars Science tent, actually, a NASA giveaway. We're going to have an 8-wheel rollover rover demo. That's going to be pretty cool. We're going to have a Mars astronaut photo op. And one of the really cool things we're going to have is the Viking Maker Project, where everyone in the community is going to have the ability to participate in building a rover.
There are going to be some other activities here, some other programs that are tied in with the new year. Tell us about some of those.
So starting off on, as I mentioned, we'll have our dinner starting off on Thursday. Then on Friday, we're going to be doing live broadcast into the Mars event from the Johnson Space Center. That's a very important event for us. We're going to have a satellite truck here on premise, and we'll be downlinking a live interview from the Johnson Space Center into our community. And then we'll be able to ask questions and answers of the folks that are at the Johnson Space Center.
Does it surprise you that NASA is so interested in this New Year's celebration here in Mars, Pennsylvania?
Not whatsoever. They are very, very, very community oriented. And having this as a STEAM event, it is one of their top focuses. And they want to give back to the community, and Mars is the perfect with the tie-in with the Mars New Year's. And in addition, with their expectation to colonize Mars in the 2030s, it kind of brings it full circle for them.
Now, I don't want to miss anything. I know there's a lot going on here. Tell us about some of the things I haven't asked you about.
Sure. So the Mars Brew Fest, that's going to be an awful lot of fun. That's going to be held down at the Mars Library. That will be on Friday evening. And we are having 16 breweries that are participating. Of course, wine, and a distillery that's participating as well. So we're pre-selling tickets at $20 a piece or $25 at the door.
Missy, is there a website somebody can look at to get some more information or to recap some of the things that you said?
www.marsnewyear.com. On our site, it has a list of all the times, all the speakers, all of our sponsors, and everything that you ever wanted to know about the Mars New Year event.
Do you expect people to come from distances to come here to this celebration? Obviously, there is a big attraction here with particularly NASA being involved.
In this little town of Mars, imagine this, we're expecting over 10,000 people.
Is that just a guess, or is this what happened 22 months ago when you had the first celebration?
We had probably about 7,000 or so folks at that point in time, and with all the publicity we've been doing and the accelerated events and everything that we're bringing in the speakers, we're expecting it to probably almost double, truly.
Now, Missy, with all these people expected here, there must be some arrangements for parking.
So we'll be shuttle busing folks from Mars High School, located on 228, down to the event, as well as we'll have roped off areas for folks to park in.
Now, of course, if people are going to spend much time here, they're going to think about one major item, and that's food. Are there any arrangements for that?
All throughout Grand Avenue, we're going to have a plethora of food vendors that are available, as well as our local businesses are going to be open to service the community.
Missy, thanks for coming by and thanks for volunteering. It sounds like it's going to be a remarkable program here. And tell us the kickoff again.
The kickoff is a blast-off dinner on May 4th, and our event is on May 5th and May 6th in downtown Mars.
Missy, thanks so much.
Thank you, Larry.
So, as you've seen and heard, Mars, Pennsylvania, here in western Pennsylvania, will be celebrating New Year's in a very big way. New Year's on Mars and in Mars. I'm Larry Berg. We'll see you next time on Faces and Places.